Hello, hello, hello. This is episode 32, if I'm not wrong, and I may have gotten it right for the first time. Hello, Hito, and welcome to the Two
Hi,
Weekends.
Chirag. Thank you. Why
No,
are you welcoming me on
the
my own
welcome.
show?
Oh no, the welcome was for the listeners. It was like, hello, Hito, and welcome to everybody to the
Oh,
Two
right,
Weekends.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, our episode count is just 1 year younger to me.
You're 33, really? I thought the episode count
I'm
is more
gonna,
like 5 or 6 years older than you now.
I'm gonna turn. No, it would have if we were more responsible and recorded quite often, but clearly
That
we
is
haven't
not
done
what I
that.
meant, by the way. Fair enough.
I know. Oh, right, you were trying to give me a compliment. No, but I am not.
Speaking of, like, since we're talking about ages and years and all this stuff, like, that's pretty much kind of what we wanted to talk about today, too, right? In fact, one of the things that we were discussing offline was just like, yeah, it's really interesting how things have changed. And I know we were thinking a little bit broader. We are thinking maybe we can talk about maybe a little bit about the last decade, but we were also kind of just exchanging notes is not maybe the right word, but just kind of getting an idea of, like, how much we've noticed over the last 5 years, especially since we've taken up this journey really strongly, how some things have changed and maybe how some things still kind of haven't. And so I think that would kind of be an interesting thing to talk about, especially when I definitely, to start off with, because the first thing that came to mind was sort of the reaction of people before we talk about, like, the arrangements and, like, availability of stuff, right? And I definitely feel like the conversation has slightly shifted, uh, because, and we can go back to, like, our first episode kind of, but, like, when we started the stuff, um, remember how everybody became a nutritionist?
Hmm.
I feel like I'm seeing less of that now.
Yeah, that doesn't happen much now.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're right.
yeah. So I think
I
partly, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just thinking, is it because of the pandemic and we're not meeting as many people?
Or maybe because we just generally don't. No. I think part of the reason, or at least part of the reason I feel that's changed, is because there is just a bit more awareness about the fact that this is a lifestyle that people adopt. I think that the people that used to interface with us and tell us this stuff actually know other vegans now. And so I think it's gotten a little less of an abrupt question you just throw out there, potentially. I'm not saying, by the way, that everybody's nutritional curiosities have been clarified. I don't mean it that way.
Nutrition curiosities.
I was
Good
trying,
word.
yeah, I was trying for a good one, but I don't think it's that. I just think it's it's just something that either, as we said, like, they just know others and it's become normal. It's a little bit normalized, and I think the other part of it is just that I think they've asked me the question enough times now, and, like, it's not going anywhere, so they've just stopped. So I'm curious, because your experience is slightly different in the sense that obviously you were here in Dubai, and I like bringing up the fact that you're in Amsterdam in every episode. I don't know why I like doing it yet, but here we go. So
As long as you're showing off on my behalf, that's fine. That way I'm the cooler one and you're not, but
that's
that's fine.
true. But what I wanted to ask you was, so obviously this is a lot of this is my experience in Dubai, which has been the city since the beginning of at least my vegan journey. Have you noticed any difference when you went to Amsterdam, and do you feel like that's different or the same as it is for you here, in the sense it's starting out in the same place, or is it just they're ahead and nobody's really talking nutrition with you?
No, I think people are quite accepting here, and people are, I would say, a little more aware about what veganism entails. But again, I haven't had a lot of exposure to people because since I've arrived,
Yeah.
I've mainly been under lockdown, and I haven't had a chance to meet a lot of people. But in general, in fact, coincidentally, one of my neighbors is vegan. And one day she was, and I'm on the ground floor. So one day she was passing outside, and usually during the day, I don't close my curtains.
Right.
So she saw these posters behind me. And she's like, "Oh, what's going on? And who's the vegan in the house?" And I'm like, "Oh, I am."
Yeah.
And and she mentioned that she is as well, and her family is as well. So she has a husband and a child,
Right.
which is quite cool, right? Because, like, what are the chances of my next door neighbor being vegan as well? But overall, whenever I've told people that I am a vegan, they've mostly been curious about what I eat and how easy it is to find vegan options rather than where do I get my protein from.
So I guess that's an improvement from before.
It is.
Okay, so the other thing that I noticed as well, and you're sticking on the people topic, is that there are people around me that have started turning vegan in some form, in one aspect or the other. And I know there was a phase that I went through a couple of years ago where that the conversation where we were talking about shifting from like, wait, where do you get your protein from? Or wait, where do you get this from, that from? Became, how do you do this? Which is what you were just saying as well. And then in some cases, actually, that has become either them adopting it as a lifestyle, at least in food. So I should maybe not lifestyle, but at least they've been trying to do it with the food. And others who've been exploring kind of mixed options to say, oh, we're trying. I'm also seeing an interesting trend, and I don't know how much of this is necessarily COVID related or not, but there are people who I follow where it has happened a couple of times where I've just posted something or shared a story that, you know, like I was eating, generally it's eating, but I've eaten something and I've marked it as vegan or whatever. And I've had a couple of DMs come back and be like, oh, hey, are you vegan? Like, I didn't know. How is that? How's it working out for you, kind of thing, right? And of course, as we have mentioned many times on the show, like for us, it's about the animals, and so it's not about how much is working out for us as much as it's like, no, this is the lifestyle I want to have, and I'm working through how I adopt it, and you know, that entire process. But it isn't about, oh my God, I'm feeling like healthier now, because you can be pretty unhealthy on a vegan diet too. But it's interesting that there is that kind of level of interest, which I know 100% where it felt when we started, at least it was more just judgmental. Like, what? Why would you do that? Like, I have actually been asked that. Like, why would you do that? When to me it's like the most obvious thing, right? But that has happened. Comparatively now, I'm seeing a lot more people either react positively to be like, oh, how's it going, or just want to constructively have a conversation. And I've seen others who are, because of maybe a sustainability focus, a plastic focus, or things like, you know, all the stories that you keep hearing with plastic bags and all this other stuff, taking approaches that are in line with the lifestyle, right? So either it is, I'm working towards reducing the amount of waste, I'm working towards reducing plastic, even if it's not like food, but it's other aspects of their lives. But I know at least of one person who I follow who actually, like, at some point, I noticed, like, you know, that they would post pictures of what they were eating from time to time, like, or what they were cooking. And I just kept noticing that, you know, I'm like, for someone who I know is fairly, was at least a fairly meat eater from when I used to start following them, I just kept noticing a lot of their dishes were very vegetarian. And in fact, not even vegetarian, like actually vegan. And occasionally, like, this person would be like, actually, I made this today, and all of it turns out it's vegan. And I was like, you know, there's something changed here. I'm very curious. And then eventually, as it turns out, landed up posting one day a series of stories to say, actually, this is something we've been thinking about for a while. We've been really considering our impact on the environment. So we started out by doing like one meat-free day, which has now become like, now we have essentially one meat day a week. So that's been the transition. And then, you know, we're trying to eat as much as we can at home, in terms of both reducing waste, but also in terms of having better control of what we're eating and eating well, reducing the plastic and all of this. Like, it was actually quite a comprehensive series of posts, which was very heartening to me, right? Because it was just nice to see. And by the way, absolutely no impact from me, right? I don't think it had anything to do with that. But it's just really interesting to see, like, there is this kind of, outside of our circles, acceptance and adoption of some aspects, if not all, of the lifestyle, which is a trend that's very heartening, because there are definitely days when I know you and me have talked about, like, well, like, there's no point. Like, these people are just not going to get it. Compared to now, where it's like, oh, okay, that's really interesting. I mean, I do. I'm just trying to recall again, as you said, we've met limited people, but I don't know actually any conversation I've had in the last maybe year and a half where it has come up that I'm vegan and it has instantly turned into a, really, okay, tell me more, or, oh, okay, tell me more. Like, it's just really nice in a way.
Yeah, I think this could be totally accounted to awareness,
Yeah.
and the fact that what I've found in the last few years is that a lot of mainstream media has started covering these things.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And you can see, especially after the pandemic, it's not just about, oh, there's a virus. in the world, but it's also about where did it come from? Why did it come here? What are we doing? And then, of course, stuff like climate change and the Paris Climate Treaty, Greta Thunberg, just all of these things,
It's
right,
creating a lot
has
of
been,
buzz. Yeah.
any publicity is good publicity. So even with all the negative publicity, that I've seen a lot of people come out in support of her, and she hasn't shied away from speaking about the benefits of veganism or the ill effects of non-veganism on the climate. And we've seen already how the wet markets in different countries have created this pandemic, and we've seen that how there are different virus strains around the world. Um, every country is coming up with their own little uh, edition
Yeah.
of the
To be fair, not to
virus.
be fair, not intentionally, but yes, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
but all of this, like, people are talking about it, and it's no longer okay. Now we are in a problem. How do we solve it? But it's also like, how did we get here?
Yeah.
And are all these people who are actually fighting for animal rights and climate rights and things like that, are they serious? Like, where is
Yeah.
this
Yeah. Yeah.
coming from?
Yeah.
I need to sit down and I need to actually listen.
Mm.
And it kind of helps that mainstream media, no matter how biased it
Is talking
is
about it
talking
more.
about it.
Yeah. And I think, even, I mean, we know that, and we've talked about this too, right? Like we do get stuck in a bit of outrage culture. Like we outrage about something, then we kind of forget about it, move on to the next thing and the next thing in that cycle. But what we're seeing as well now is, like, those pictures that used to come out of animals in the ocean, whales and turtles being stuck with plastic, are becoming more frequent as well. There have been, thankfully, good reports come out from pretty recognizable publications about the impact of disposable masks and gloves and so on. Again, back on the ocean, I know there was a WHO study as well, in terms of what we're putting back because of the pandemic, right? And that also created a little bit of a. Again, the point is it's staying in the news more and more often, which I think is definitely helping. Um, and then maybe, who knows, maybe these two people who are doing a podcast talking about Miley Cyrus every once in a while might be helping too.
Yeah. And Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is also kind of helping our cause
Yeah,
in some way.
in some
He
way.
doesn't realize it, but he
But
is.
he is, yeah, yeah. One interesting piece of news just here, because it's also podcast related, is that there's actually a group called Podcasters Declare, if I remember the name correctly, that actually started a petition online to ask Apple to add a climate change category to podcasts, because it's once such thing doesn't exist. It's actually landed up within the podcasting community, especially within the platform community, like the people who run the tech that powers podcasts, has led to a lot of conversations in the last 1 or 2 weeks. So I'm listening to it, like all the different shows that I listen to that cover this kind of stuff have landed up talking about the fact that this has happened. So it was a signature campaign, but interestingly, it caught enough eyes that it created a little bit of a momentum. It led to a different conversation, of course, because there is this conversation happening in the podcasting world about, like, well, why does Apple need to control the categories? Let it be a little open thing. And so the people are working on that. So that also turned out to be a positive. But it was just interesting that it was a climate change category that was being requested that became, the source of a pretty widespread signature campaign, but also in the world of podcasting, which is kind of nice. So the other thing I was thinking about also is, let's talk about kind of the situations. And I know now we're in different cities, but from that kind of a support, right? Systematic support, as we would call it, maybe. We think about how things have changed, especially over the last decade when it's come to, I guess, supermarkets, restaurants. I mean, places where this has been a struggle. And I know we've struggled with it too, even as much as 5 years ago. I know as a vegetarian, I've struggled definitely 10 years ago, quite a few times when it's come to just not wanting or wanting non-meat options at certain places. I know there were times when I've been to places and they were just like, "What? That's it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's all on your menu that I can eat, by the way. So I can just have the dal. So I don't know what you want me to do here." So I've definitely had that. I think that's changed quite a bit too.
It has. I think there are lots of options now, and there are different kinds of options, and people are experimenting. And just the sheer number of vegan restaurants, right? Exclusively vegan restaurants have increased so much. Um, and I remember when you and I went vegan together, almost together, we were like, okay, There's this one restaurant out of the hundreds of restaurants. I'm like, hey, look, vegan option,
Yeah,
clearly
it was
labeled
vegan
vegan.
option, by the way. It wasn't even like one
Yeah,
option.
but
Yeah.
now, hello. But now it's just that every other restaurant has at least one or two vegan options. So that excitement is not there anymore. Now it's just weird when a restaurant comes up and does not have a vegan option,
Correct.
and you can see in the supermarkets aisles of exclusively vegan products, specially labeled vegan products. There is a sign for logo for vegan products for cruelty free, the leaping bunny. It has now become more prevalent. It was always there. I think it was there for more than a decade, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just become more prevalent because people know that the consumers are now thinking 10 times before picking up their product. And these are certain things that they need to invest in. So good for Peter. And just the avenues, right, where vegan products have been introduced, medicines, supplements, um, you know, I mean, I bought a toilet cleaner liquid the other day and it said
Yeah.
it's vegan,
Yeah. 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 Or
which
at least
was
it's
like,
cruelty free and stuff. We're seeing more of that here too.
yeah, and that it does not have animal ingredients, right? So that was pretty cool. And obviously, the demand is driving it. People are not, companies are not just like, oh, okay, maybe let me just add this. So there's been a lot of change in the past few years when it comes to shopping for vegan products in general and eating out.
I'm noticing something very interesting that's been happening here, at least, right? So if I have to put it like if you put it on a time scale, there was a time when you had to like really scrouge around to hope that something a product in a certain aisle was vegan, right? And then this was doubly true for cosmetics and other things, right? And then we saw this little spate, at least here in Dubai, which happened in the last like 3-4 years, because it happened after we went vegan, right? Because initially when we went vegan, it was still like a bit of a struggle, and then about a year later, suddenly it was like there's a vegan option here and a vegan option there and all that, right? And we saw this shift in supermarkets and things for these exclusive vegan aisles, right? And you started seeing, I mean, very famously, Lulu had this entire like an almost an entire aisle of just like vegan, cruelty friendly products. Carrefour famously has this, like they have this organic healthy section, which I still don't know why it's a separate thing, but they have that section, and then in one corner of that section you find things like plant-based meats and other things. So that's been the trend, right? They've been like, okay, let's highlight this. Let's highlight the fact that we have it and do it and do it and do it. And now I'm starting to see, especially, I've noticed it more in the last maybe 6 months or so, that now it's becoming normal in the sense that you can walk to a regular cheese aisle in a supermarket now, and there's no special marking, there's no special designation. One of the options is the vegan one, right? It's not meant to be called out. It's not meant to be special or weird or go to that different aisle. We don't keep you in the cheese aisle. Now we're finding in the regular aisle. You go to the milk aisle and you find alternative milk products listed in the same, just one extension of that aisle, which in some ways is very nice. Like, I think it's very nice to see, because it's no longer this thing where it's like, yeah, all the people shop here and then the vegans go to their own aisle in that corner. It's
Yeah.
like, no, if you're in the same aisle as everybody else, which on one side it feels very normalizing to me, because it's like, hey, don't you have any plant-based milk? Oh, no, 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 go to that different aisle. Because why would we keep it in the milk section? So ridiculous. And that's changing, but also it's an awareness thing, right? So if now a person who may not be following a vegan diet or may not be drinking this stuff, actually gets to see the options in the same aisle when he's going to get the other stuff,
Yeah.
which is just really interesting, and I'm definitely seeing that shift happen. It started with milk. Now I'm seeing it for other stuff. I'm seeing it for cheese now, which I think is just fascinating to see it for cheese, because it seems like one of the last ones. It's like breaking a barrier, because it's meant to be the cold fridges and all of that. But now in Carrefour, like if you want the Daya cheese, you just have to go to the cheese aisle. It's not in that separate area anymore.
Yeah. It's the same here as well. I don't know what the shift has been because I wasn't here very long, but I don't have to go to a separate aisle for my milk. Um, I don't have to go to a separate aisle for butter. I don't have to go to a separate aisle for cheese. And yeah, it's just stuff kept next to each other. Vegan cream, vegan whipping cream kept with regular
Yeah,
brands,
butter as
yogurt.
well. Yeah, yeah.
They are they're kept in the same section. Obviously, they're kept separately in the sense that okay, this
Correct.
entire block is
Yeah.
for vegan products, but at least I'm not going to the other end of the supermarket because strategically my mind is trained to go to this aisle for milk and my cold products, and
Yeah.
then I'm told that okay, just get out,
Yeah, yeah.
you
That's what I
unhealthy
mean.
little
Yeah.
freak. How dare you eat plant-based food? So that's not happening. But having said that, obviously, we spoke in one of our previous episodes about the European Parliament's priorities on naming these products,
Yeah.
and that seems like a bit of a regression going back 10 years or maybe more. Um, and I You should totally check out Oatly's social media. They actually created a page where they had a test to say that the European Parliament thinks you're stupid because you can't recognize whether this product is actual milk or
Or
plant
plant
based
based.
milk.
Yeah.
So, just for fun, I tried to take the test to see what they're actually trying to do here.
Right.
And they had they had questions like which one is a dog, okay, and then there was a picture of a dog and a picture of a bear and the name saying that okay, this is a dog and
Okay,
this is
this
a
is a
bear.
bear.
And they had to choose. So they had like 4 or 5 questions. And then in the end, it says that congratulations, you're not stupid. You can recognize products from each other. I thought that was very clever.
Yeah.
And obviously, I like sarcasm as a form of humor, so I
And
really
then
loved it.
they've done that quite a bit, I think, just in general anyway. In just the way they do their social. Yeah.
And their packaging as well, right? Oatly's packaging is it's phenomenal. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's to the point. It's not random pictures of I don't know happy oats as such, but but it's to the point. It tells you exactly what you're doing.
Random pictures of happy oats. Okay.
uh, it tells you exactly what your carbon footprint is when you're buying this product,
Mm,
and it's also a bit creative, right? It says some funny things on it.
yeah.
So I think that's a good brand that needs to be supported. But 5 or 10 years ago, this would have been completely unheard of, you know. Um,
Absolutely, yeah. No, and I think also it's so to go back to your point about the European Parliament thing. First of all, I would chalk it down to like there's no such thing as bad publicity. So if it gets attention that somebody's trying to do this, it'll raise awareness to a few people that like, wait, why is this even an issue? So that's can be useful. Although having said that, I don't think that's the way we should be getting awareness about this stuff. But hey, I think it's interesting. I mean, if you look at for me, a good parallel has always been sort of electric cars. In fact, recently I was reading a report that said that like there was a car in the 70s, I think, or the 80s. Somebody had modeled out an electric car using a regular chassis and had just built out an electric car. And there was a whole video of this person like driving around. Now, I'll put a caveat there. That's what I've just seen. Haven't dug too much into it. But it is something I've always said. I do believe that it's the oil industry, so to speak, largely that has prevented electric cars from becoming a thing. Because it's very hard for me to understand that companies as big as they are, especially automobile companies, like didn't just set aside some research and put it. When I look at as an example, what Elon Musk has done now, but also what has now been replicated by the Nissan and they have Chevy and so on. They have very normal entry level cars that are electric, right? And I say entry level with a caveat. I know they're more expensive, but they're not a luxury car ultimately. And obviously the immediate question is, well, you have the capacity, you have the factory production units, and blah 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 blah, all stuff that Tesla had to like invent from scratch, and that's why there was a large period where they struggled getting production and stuff, properly done. But it wasn't until it became fashionable to own one that they were forced to make one, right? And now you see kind of the laggards coming in and all launching electric cars as if they've discovered something new. And you do wonder, like, well, what could have been the reason why we didn't explore this from before? Because we've made tons of advances in electricity. And if you look at smartphones and stuff, and we moved to things like all day battery life and very replenishable. I mean, there was a lot of research done towards building new forms of battery and power and storage, right? So why was it that it took so long? Why did they had to, it was a consumer push that pushed it, right? Ultimately, Tesla created the FOMO for the consumer to say, "Oh my God, I want to own one," and then create the demand from that way, right? So why? And I do believe that there's this pushback, and I think one of the things that we're seeing, and this has to still play itself out because we're still in the initial stages of it, is that this pushback is coming from that traditional industry who are in the process currently of losing money, and as a result, potentially this is one way of tackling that, right? Is to prevent the sale by not listing them, right? I would imagine to them, a vegan cheese or a vegan milk being in the same aisle is not beneficial, right? Because it suddenly allows a consumer to look at an option and be like, oh, I didn't know that X kind of milk only costs this much. Maybe I should try it. I keep hearing from XYZ like about it, right? But if you don't see it in that aisle, when you go to pick up your milk, you're never going to pick it up, right? And I think that change we're starting to see now also because, again, I think there are too many products. So before it used to be like you would get one brand, and then you could stack all the vegan products in one shelf and you're done. Now I think it's harder to do, right? So it might as well have it. And I'm sure that the demand is going up as well. So if more people keep going to be like, I'm standing in the milk aisle, where's my milk? And then they realize like, might as well just put the milk here now. So I think all of that is why we're seeing the shift happen now and not happen a few years ago. But I do think that like, when you look at something like what happened in terms of like trying to lobby a bill into order that doesn't make sense or it seems regressive, I think this is that kind of pushback that you saw in other industries, or parallels can be drawn to other industries where the pushback was not, we're not capable of putting this together. The pushback is we just don't want to change what is making a lot of money for us or what is super beneficial for us, irrespective of what is happening. I think it's very difficult today for companies to not acknowledge it. In fact, I have definitely seen, whether you just look at it on social media or otherwise, companies' decisions getting questioned all the time. Over very small things, by the way. Sometimes it's not necessarily like, why are you making a car that's causing pollution? But it's even been like, why didn't you take a stand to support this? Why didn't you speak up because of this? And I think that this is going to keep changing. I think the consumer behavior is very drastically changing at the moment. And at some point, I don't think it's going to be possible for these companies or anybody to lobby this even, because I don't think this will even make it anywhere, because no politician will want to even encourage this, because their constituents will turn and be like, why would we support you? I think that's going to happen anyway. It's just the early days.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I guess that's where you need that was actually going to be my next point, that we now have publicly listed companies, um, exclusive vegan companies, right? So Beyond is now a publicly listed company. Um, and I think there are a couple of other brands as well. And that kind of gives them that strength in the market, in the economy, to be able to, um, work with the governments and not just have wealth hoarded in just the,
Yeah, and be
because
on the
dairy
sidelines or
industry,
be out of it. Yeah, yeah, I get what you mean.
yeah, like dairy industry is too strong at this point. Yeah, it is now going down, but it's going to take a couple of more decades for things to kind of start to even out a little bit. But it's obviously not fair, it's just the same argument of the rich being richer and the poor being poorer, and everyone should have equal rights in an economy. But the fact that um, you are the one controlling market demand, you are the one, it's like a puppet show, right? And it's just unfair. And the good thing is that the generation now realizes this and they see it.
Yeah,
The generation, our generation, or the generations, what are we, millennials, I think?
yeah, we're millennials.
uh, yeah, and the
Well, now that
Gen
you've
Z.
disclosed our age, I can't say anything else.
I did that at the start of the episode. I'm young, I'm okay, I
No,
think.
no, I meant like I can't now say we're Gen Z or something because you've already declared your age, so I can't play with that anymore. That's what I
All
meant.
right, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I could still pass off as a Gen Z though, if I had to.
Again, it's too late to do this on this episode, but we'll try next time. Maybe they'll forget.
No, I mean, I can, anyway, I'll do it where it's needed.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I think it's just public awareness is pretty strong now. It's only going to get better, I believe. But companies, celebrities have recognized the need And at the end of the day, this world is driven by money and greed, right? If there's money, everyone's going to jump over there.
Yeah, which I think is which is partly what's happening at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're jumping over there and you are automatically pumping in more money and making it stronger, which is exactly what we need for veganism to thrive. I know a lot of people, and I know people who come from a point of view of ethics saying that, yeah, but this is not about consumerism, this is about animal rights. And yes, you're right, but you can't deny the fact that the world runs on consumerism. And to be a part of the change, you have to be a part of the system. You can't stay outside the system and try and change it. So I think that the next 2 or 3 decades is going to be phenomenal for the vegan movement. I can't wait to see that.
But ultimately, it's going to be the demand that drives everything. And like I said, I think there are some example companies that have been really boosting this demand, right? Like it wasn't until Beyond Meat came around that people were like, oh, okay, taste is not really something I should be running after because I can get it, right? And it's just one of those things. And I have a lot of debates with a lot of people about Beyond Meat in particular, right? Because it's very polarizing. Because a lot of non-vegans feel like, well, if the vegans want to feel enjoy the taste of meat, they should just eat meat. And I'm like, yeah, it's not the same thing. I'm sorry. I do understand why it has to be cultivated. And I think and every time I've said this, by the way, to them, and every time I've said that, yeah, listen, think about it this way. If you enjoy the taste of meat, but you're also aware of the cruelty, and you can do both, why should that product A not exist, and why should you judge someone for buying it? And the moment I say that, it was like, oh, okay, yeah, I can kind of see that, you know? And I think that's, again, so you needed a Beyond Meat or maybe an Impossible, whoever, to come in and showcase that for it to become a thing potentially.
Yeah, and besides, I feel that if these people don't question the concept of dildos, they shouldn't be questioning the concept of fake meat.
Oh man, there's so many layers to this that I thought of like 4 different questions and I was like, man, I don't know where to go now. Okay, so we'll just leave it at that. I think that statement stands. Yeah.
Yeah. Whoever's debating with you next time, just bring them on, I don't know, minute 23 on episode 32 or something like that, and just play the sentence, and they will get the point.
I hope so. You never know. Meat eating can cloud their judgment sometimes. Dum dum. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, a couple of things actually. There's now a dating app, especially for vegans and vegetarians.
Oh yes, yeah.
Uh, and that's something that would have been completely unheard of 5 years ago.
True.
And I think that pretty much speaks a lot about how many people there are out there, that there was a need to generate an app for it. Um, but maybe you can try that app for us, Chirag, and let us know.
That's very dangerous territory you entered there. Um, I mean, it's funny that you were saying that because I was just remembering that I know that it's been so interesting, right? Like I know at some point seen people say like no vegans please in dating profiles,
E.
and it's just been so it's an interesting kind of turnaround. Like I think this is one of those, like every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Like this is the opposite reaction. We're like, fine, we'll just go make our own dating app. Screw you
Yeah,
all. So I can
yeah,
see why that can be a thing, or you can feel like it's a bit weird. It's an interesting thing.
yeah. And also another thing that I think is phenomenal is the UK recognizes veganism as a religion.
Does it now? Okay.
So you cannot discriminate against vegans just or you cannot discriminate on someone's dietary choices
Okay.
or
Similar to like you
lifestyle
would. Okay.
like you wouldn't do religiously, right? So yeah, at your workplace, when if you are being discriminated against just because you're a vegan, then that's something that is punishable by the corporate law, which
Interesting.
I think is very interesting.
It is an
Um,
interesting approach. How did they pull that off? I'm very curious about that.
UK, I'm not surprised. I mean, the UK is big on veganism.
No, I
I
know,
mean,
but like it's an interesting because it's a non-conventional approach to take, right? Like it's kind of saying, you know what, instead of like dealing in the nitty-gritty, I'm just going to spin this thing around and bring it in this way through legislation, but not legislation that everybody should have vegan options. Just legislation will like recognize that this at the same thing as something you can't discriminate against. I'm just very intrigued by the process that got them there, but that's cool.
Yeah, I think we should do some more research. Does this mean that if there are office parties and if I just have fries, can I just sue my company?
You see, this is the difference between you and me, I think, because you were thinking that when I was thinking, can I then declare a couple of religious holidays just for us?
Oh, that would be
Because I was thinking the other way, right? I'm just like, okay, how do we get out of this? And you were thinking about food, so yeah, very typical.
good.
Or in
Yeah.
particular, you were thinking about fries, yeah. But anyway,
Yeah, I love fries, but I would like to eat other things as well. I mean, it's 2021. So I was going to narrate this incident to you, right? Last year I was in Belgium and I was in the hotel. And when I checked in, I emailed them in advance and asked them and told them that I was vegan. And they said, yeah, yeah, that shouldn't be a problem at all. And at check in, she's like, so any particular requirements? And I was like, oh, yeah, I had emailed that I'm vegan. So I was hoping that my room tariff included breakfast, so I was hoping that I can get some vegan breakfast
right.
options. And she said, "Oh yeah, that's not a problem at all. What would you like to eat?" And I'm like, "This could take a day." But I said, "No, I think it would be easier if you tell me
Yeah, what you can provide, and then yeah, I'll
what
pick
can
one.
you
Yeah,
provide." And she said, "No, we're flexible. Whatever you want to eat." I was like, "Okay then. Can I get some vegan toast with some vegan butter, some cereal with some plant-based milk, some fruit?" Um, then I was like, "Is asking for vegan croissants too much?" And I said, "Yeah, definitely. That they wouldn't have that." Then I said that if I can get a main of tofu scramble, that would be lovely.
yeah.
And she said, "Yeah, okay, great." She noted all of it out, and I was like, "This is an amazing restaurant. Somebody is getting a lot of stars on TripAdvisor from me."
Yeah.
Anyway, so I checked in next morning, breakfast arrived, and I had the fruit. I had some bread, which I wasn't sure if that was 100% vegan. I did not have the butter. Um, I had some juice. Um, and then I had a big fat slab of tofu, this big, like a brick sized
Right.
tofu, just covered with cling wrap on a plate because that would have made it fancier. Um,
Yes, the right way to then satisfy a vegan whose breakfast you can't cater is to wrap their food in plastic. Great idea.
yeah. And then I was like, I looked around in my room. I was like, probably this is their way of telling me that I have to make my scramble myself. So then I was like, I don't see a kitchenette here. There's no way I can cook something over here.
Right.
I don't see any spices. I don't see any onions or tomatoes or anything else. So I was pretty grumpy. Anyway, I'm not a morning person, so I'm anyway grumpy. And then you give me this for breakfast for something that I've paid. So I went, I obviously just ate the fruit and just a little bit of bread, and that's it. And I left and I went down and I said, "Hey, so this happened. What are you expecting me to do?" And she said, "Yeah, but you said you wanted tofu." And I'm like,
I mean, I know I'm
you know,
laughing, but like it's not funny.
but, but you know what's funny? It's you're a chef. You are a chef. I'm a human being. What makes you think that any human is capable of eating one big slab of tofu just like that? Like,
Unseasoned or whatever, yeah.
but when you hear that the person is vegan, do you lose all your brain cells? Like, are you that overwhelmed by the fact that I have to cater to a vegan that I have forgotten how things function, how the world functions? And I'm like, but how do you expect me to eat it? Did you really think that I'm going to take a fork and a knife and cut into the tofu and be like, this is the best breakfast I've ever had? I mean, what's going on? And she said, oh, there must be some misunderstanding. I was like, oh, you don't say.
No kidding.
Um, So she's like, so what would you like to have? And I said, oh, look, I'd asked for tofu scramble,
Yeah.
but if you cannot provide it, that's fine. Could you just probably get me some vegan butter? That's all I need. And just get me fruit. And that's fine for tomorrow. They did provide some cereal and plant based milk. So that was okay. And then the next day, I got my breakfast with egg scramble. So maybe she just heard the word scramble and she's like, okay, I don't
Well,
know
you
what to
said
do
tofu
with this
scramble. I
tofu
gave
thing.
I gave you tofu. It didn't work. I'll give you the scramble this time. Right? Fair enough. Yeah,
Exactly.
it sounds very
I
logical
mean,
to me. Yeah.
yeah, and tofu scramble is such a difficult phrase to comprehend. Like, what am I supposed to do here?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm not going to use my brain cells. So here it is. And then the next day, I swear to God, I didn't even have the energy. I was like,
Well, obviously, because you hadn't eaten anything for 2 days.
yeah. and that. But then I was like, where? How should I start this argument? Like, what should I do? Should I
Yeah,
laugh? Should I
you can't.
cry?
Yeah, there's nothing left
So
there. Yeah.
yeah, so then there is this downside where we've got chefs around the world. The second you tell them, you remember the stuff that happened with you at the restaurant in the mall, Apre. Um,
Oh yeah. Oh my. This was a long time ago. I remember the story recently, like after a long time. But yeah, this was soon after actually. So just before, um, like when I was vegetarian, I used to go to the place. They had this little like flatbread thing with cheese, and it was just one of the snacks. You grab a drink and you have a snack, and then obviously things changed, and then I went back after a few weeks or months, I forget, and I went there and I was
we
like, oh,
went together. You were
oh,
going to
it was you
introduce
and
me to
me.
that
Oh,
place.
that's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay, and I was like, okay, well, unfortunately this has cheese, so hey, we'll get it without cheese, and so we told the waiter, oh hey, listen, like I know you have this thing, they called it the pizza, I think, or something like that, and I was like, I know you have this thing, it's like whatever tomato base and some chili or something. That's what I want, but I want it without cheese. And the first thing that threw me off was the person was like, "Let me go check," right? Because and the thing is like, when you say "let me go check," when there's a pizza oven behind you and there's a guy who's loading a pizza and making it fresh. I'm like, I don't think there's anything to check. Like, just don't put the one layer that I'm asking you not to put. Like, this is really not complicated. Anyway, that's just like fine, do your thing. If that makes you feel better, go ask the chef, And she went and she diligently asked the chef. And 5 minutes later came back and looked me point blank in the eye and went, "I'm sorry, we can't do that." And I just looked at her and I was like, "You know what? I've been here enough times. Can you hang on? I'm gonna go talk to the chef." And I just promptly got up and started walking towards the little pizza chef because it's behind the bar, so you can kind of see it and you can interact with the guy. Luckily or whatever for me, because I'd been there a few times and stuff, the floor manager like kind of knew me by face, like kind of recognized me, used to say hi once in a while, saw me like blast across the place, and I think he came running after me. And was like, "Hey, is everything okay? Like, I saw you." Like, and I was like, "Well, this is what happened." And he was like, "No, of course we can do that. There's no problem." Like, he's like, "I'll talk to the chef. Please go sit down. Like, don't worry about this." And I was like, "Fine." And we eventually did get it, but it was just as a concept, where the person like first of all said I have to check, but then actually went and supposedly checked and came back and said, "Oh, we can't not add cheese on your pizza because you know." And
But
it wasn't
these,
even a debate about the cost, right? It wasn't even I was like, "Hey, and I will pay less because I'm asking you not to put cheese," right?
oh, that's
We didn't even get to that stage. Like it was just like we can't add this. Like when we make a
if
pizza, we have to add everything. We can't stop the process midway. Like how can you ask us to do that?
yeah, I mean, asking people to pay less for your vegan option because that's logic, then yeah, you'd be kicked out of the restaurant, I guess. Um, but these are people who have degrees. They've gone to cooking school
Well,
to
okay,
learn how to cook food.
yeah.
And they're like, I don't know what to do with this tofu block. Like, oh my God, I don't know. Here it is. Take the whole thing and
Yeah.
figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder what happens behind in the kitchen. Like, is he
Yeah,
just
what was the process that led to a cling wrapped slab of
yeah?
tofu showing up on your plate? Yeah, exactly.
So in my head, I'm like, okay, hey chef, yeah, we have an annoying vegan guest who wants something to do with tofu. Oh, okay,
Yeah, we have,
shit.
we have that
Okay.
block in the fridge. Just give it to her.
No, they went and shopped for it because they didn't have the block at the fridge. Okay, I'm gonna go bring some tofu and I'm gonna see what I want to do. Goes to the shop, brings the tofu. Right. What can I do with it? I've never seen this thing
I
before.
just realized what happened. And so what happened? No, what happened there is because if they brought a block, because I think on some tofus it says like ready to eat, and they'd be like, "Oh, okay, so I can just unwrap this and give it to her because it's ready to eat."
Well, you're a chef.
I know. I'm not. I'm just saying
Yeah,
that
so
it's
then
not.
this person has gone like, okay, I've never seen this thing. Poke, poke. Oh, it's nice. I think she can chew it. Um, Hold on a second. What's gonna make it look nicer? A piece of plastic.
Well, I
And
opened it. I
then,
have to put it back in plastic and send it to her, right? Obviously, like one last note that I had was also it was really nice when we went to the liquor store here, and now you can, for the first time, we saw actually a section that said sustainable wines, vegan wines as
oh,
a section,
nice.
right? Which was kind of really cool as well. This is not to say that vegan wines haven't been around. And if any of you listening to this are absolutely shocked by this, I recommend you spend some time on barnivore.com. But like we've seen those wines come through, and obviously, as and when it's been possible, I've also checked, and a lot of wines are listed anyway, so it's not been a problem. I'm seeing more and more wines show up with the vegan sign or with the mention of vegan or whatever. But it was just nice to see like sort of this entire section dedicated to vegan wines. So all the wines in that section were vegan, and then again, vegan wines were also stacked elsewhere. But it was just nice.
There's nothing better when your alcohol is vegan. Everything else is okay, it's secondary.
On that note, thank you very much for joining us on this episode of the Two Vegans. Yeah.
Keep listening to us.
Yeah.
And
No, and share as well if you can, like how you feel things have changed for you the last few years, in your city, especially if you're not in Dubai or in Amsterdam. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you. So you can find us at the.2.vegans on Instagram. And until next time,
bye.
bye.